Some words leave wounds. Others change the course of a person's life forever.
Lady Charlotte.
You've been avoiding the ballroom.
She belongs among people of influence.
Then why did you ask Father for my hand?
Because I believed your family possessed something of value.
I was mistaken.
Then end it.
Do not speak about her.
Everyone eventually learns where people truly come from. Your mother was more than their appearance. Passion cannot...
You know nothing about my family.
I know enough. You're beneath me. One day you'll realize I was generous to choose you at all.
Mother.
The Duke believed he knew who she was. But the greatest secret in England had remained hidden for 22 years.
The Duke of Ashford wishes to meet you.
The Duke?
He has accepted Lady Pembroke's invitation.
You'll both attend.
Lady Charlotte.
Your Grace.
Would you honor me with a walk?
England's most eligible bachelor.
Your Grace, may I present my daughter, Lady Charlotte Pemberton?
Gowns are expected. I'd rather discuss ideas.
Then perhaps we've underestimated one another.
Shkorit. Charlotte believed he admired her mind.
Would you honor me with a walk? Your father says you enjoy philosophy.
Books have always been easier to understand than people.
Interesting answer.
Only 6 weeks later, England received
Lady
news.
Charlotte, together we would make a partnership. Will you marry me?
Mother would
Is
be
that-
so proud.
Father, why do you look relieved instead of happy?
Sometimes they are... No woman expects poetry.
But every woman hopes to know why she's chosen.
Because I believe you would make a suitable Duchess.
I'll marry you.
Have you noticed?
Smiles less every week.
Perhaps courtship has become...
Duty.
Are you truly marrying her?
I gave my word.
But society says her mother came from I'm not marrying the girl for affection. Her father possesses something I require.
Then the marriage is merely...
A transaction.
The engagement she believed was built on respect had begun to crumble.
Moonlight illuminates an elegant stone terrace overlooking manicured gardens. The sound of a waltz drifts from the ballroom beyond French doors. Lady Charlotte Pemberton, 22, wearing a modest cream gown, stands alone at the balustrade, her shoulders tense. The door opens. Duke Nathaniel Ashford, 29, impeccably dressed in black evening attire, steps out. His expression is cold, calculating. Duke Ashford. Lady Charlotte, I've been looking for you. Charlotte doesn't turn. Charlotte. I assumed you'd be too occupied with Lady Eleanor to notice my absence, Your Grace. Duke Ashford. Approaching. Eleanor Wingate is everything a duchess should be, poised, connected. Her bloodline stretches back to the conquest. Charlotte finally turns to face him, her eyes glistening. Charlotte. Then why did you ask my father for my hand? Duke Ashford. A mistake I've spent 3 months regretting. Charlotte flinches as though struck. Charlotte. Then why not simply break the engagement? Duke Ashford. Because your father was insistent, desperate, even, almost as if he needed this match more than you did. He steps closer, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. Duke Ashford continued. But I've learned things, Charlotte, about your mother, about her origins, about the shame your family has hidden behind pretty manners and borrowed jewels. Charlotte. Voice trembling. My mother was good and kind. Duke Ashford. Your mother was worthless, and daughters inherit more from their mothers than their faces. Charlotte's hand flies up to slap him, but he catches her wrist. Duke Ashford continued. Such passion, pity it's wasted on someone so utterly beneath me. He releases her and turns toward the ballroom. Charlotte, you know nothing about my family.
You know nothing about my family.
I know enough. You're beneath me.
Nothing about who I truly am. The Duke pauses, glancing back with disdain. Duke Ashford. I know everything I need to know. You're a mistake I'll correct the moment I find the legal means to do so. He leaves, Charlotte grips the balustrade, tears streaming down her face. Charlotte, whispering, then you know nothing at all. A letter slips from her reticule and falls to the terrace floor. The camera pushes in on the visible text. My dearest Charlotte, the time has come to reveal what I have kept hidden these 22 years. Your true heritage is not what anyone believes. The man I have called husband is not your father. Your real father is. The rest is obscured in shadow. 8 months earlier. The drawing room at Pemberton House, though modest compared to the great estates of England, possessed a quiet dignity that reflected its inhabitants. Charlotte sat by the window, her embroidery abandoned in her lap as she watched rain trace patterns down the glass. Her father, Lord Henry Pemberton, entered with an expression she had never seen before, a mixture of triumph and profound anxiety. Charlotte, my dear, he began, settling into the chair opposite her, I have news that will change your life. She set aside her needlework, noting how his hands trembled slightly. Her father was not a robust man. Years of managing a dwindling estate had carved lines into his face that made him appear older than his 53 years. The Duke of Ashford has expressed interest in making your acquaintance, he continued. I've arranged for us to attend Lady Pembroke's soiree next week. He'll be there.
The Duke of Ashford wishes to meet you.
The Duke?
He has accepted Lady Pembroke's invitation.
You'll both attend.
Charlotte's heart quickened. The Duke of Ashford was one of the most eligible men in England, and one of the most notoriously particular. Why would he be interested in me? We've never even met. Henry rose and walked to the window, his reflection ghostly in the rain-darkened glass. Your mother and I always wanted the best for you. We may not have the grandest connections, but you possess qualities that any sensible man would value. Intelligence, kindness, grace. There was something he wasn't saying. Charlotte knew her father well enough to recognize when he was editing the truth. But she was also dutiful enough not to press him, not when he wore that expression of fragile hope. The soiree at Pembroke House exceeded Charlotte's expectations. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across silk wallpaper, and the scent of hothouse flowers mingled with expensive perfumes. Charlotte wore her best gown, a pale blue silk that had belonged to her mother, altered to fit the current fashion. When the Duke of Ashford entered the room, conversations faltered. He was striking rather than handsome, with sharp features that spoke of generations of aristocratic breeding. His eyes, dark as winter midnight, swept the room with the assurance of a man who had never doubted his place in the world. Lord Henry guided Charlotte forward with a hand on her elbow. Your Grace, may I present my daughter, Lady Charlotte Pemberton.
England's most eligible bachelor.
Your Grace, may I present my daughter, Lady Charlotte Pemberton.
The Duke's gaze settled on her with disconcerting intensity. Lady Charlotte, your father has spoken of you with great affection. Your Grace, Charlotte curtsied perfectly, years of her mother's training evident in the graceful movement. Would you care to take a turn about the room? He asked, offering his arm. As they walked, Charlotte was acutely aware of the curious stares following them. The Duke of Ashford courting the daughter of an obscure baron. It defied the usual calculations of society. Your father tells me you read extensively, the Duke said. I do, Your Grace, though I suspect my taste in literature might strike you as unfashionable. I prefer philosophy to romantic novels.
Would you honor me with a walk? Your father says you enjoy philosophy.
Books have always been easier to understand than people.
Interesting answer.
Indeed, for the first time, genuine interest flickered across his features. Which philosophers? I've recently finished John Stuart Mill's work on liberty. His arguments about individual freedom are quite compelling, though I question his conclusions about. She caught herself, suddenly aware that she was speaking too freely, too passionately. Ladies were meant to be educated but not intellectual, interested but not opinionated. But the Duke smiled, a real smile, not the polite mask he'd worn since entering. "Please continue. I'm curious to hear your objections." They talked for an hour, moving from philosophy to poetry, from politics to the sciences. Charlotte forgot to guard her words, forgot to present the careful facade expected of unmarried ladies. And the Duke, for his part, seemed genuinely engaged in a way she suspected was rare for him. When he escorted her back to her father, he bowed over her hand. "I should very much like to call on you, Lady Charlotte, with your father's permission, of course." Henry's face flooded with relief so profound that Charlotte felt a stirring of unease. "You would be most welcome, Your Grace."
Gowns are expected. I'd rather discuss ideas.
Then perhaps we've underestimated one another.
Correct. Charlotte believed he admired her mind.
The courtship that followed was brief, and to Charlotte's surprise, pleasant. The Duke called at Pemberton House 3 times a week. They rode together in Hyde Park, attended the theater, and engaged in conversations that left Charlotte intellectually energized in a way she'd never experienced. Yet there remained something she couldn't quite identify, a reserve in his manner, a calculation behind his smiles. She told herself it was merely his natural aristocratic restraint, the product of a life lived under constant scrutiny. 6 weeks after their first meeting, the Duke proposed during a garden party at his London residence.
Only 6 weeks later, England received
Lady
news.
Charlotte, together we would make a partnership. Will you marry me?
The proposal itself was private, delivered in a secluded corner of the rose garden while other guests mingled on the lawn. "Lady Charlotte," he began, taking her hand, "I believe we would make an excellent match. You possess intelligence and breeding. I can offer you a position of considerable influence. Will you do me the honor of becoming my Duchess?" It was not a declaration of love. Charlotte recognized that even as her heart hammered with a confusing mixture of excitement and disappointment. But love matches were rare among their class. Respect and compatibility were more realistic foundations for marriage. "Yes, Your Grace," she answered, "I will."
No woman expects poetry,
But every woman hopes to know why she's chosen.
because I believe you would make a suitable Duchess.
I'll marry you.
His kiss on her hand was brief and formal. As they walked back to announce their engagement, Charlotte caught sight of her father. His expression was not merely happy, it was triumphant, almost desperate in its relief. The engagement was announced in the Times the following morning. The reactions were immediate and varied. Some congratulated the Duke on choosing a bride of character over mere connections. Others whispered that it was a peculiar match, that Lord Pemberton must have some hidden leverage to secure such an alliance. The Duke seemed not to notice or care about the gossip. He was attentive without being warm, proper without being passionate. Charlotte told herself she was content. Many marriages began with less. But 2 weeks after the engagement, something shifted. Charlotte was visiting the Duke's London townhouse for tea when she overheard a conversation she was not meant to hear.
Have you noticed?
Smiles less every week.
Perhaps courtship has become...
Duty.
She had stepped into the library to fetch a book the Duke had recommended when voices drifted through the open window. The Duke and his friend, Viscount Hartley, speaking in the garden below. Still going through with it then.
I am not marrying the girl for affection. Her father possesses something I require.
Then the marriage is merely...
A transaction.
Hartley's voice carried clearly on the summer air. "I gave my word," the Duke replied, his tone flat. "But surely you've heard the rumors about her mother. Common as dirt, they say. Worked in a shop before somehow snaring old Pemberton." "I've heard." The Duke's voice was cold, distant. "But the arrangement serves my purposes. Her father's been quite cooperative regarding certain matters." "What matters could a nobody like Pemberton possibly?" "That's not your concern, Hartley." Charlotte pressed against the wall, her hand over her mouth to stifle any sound. The book slipped from her trembling fingers and struck the floor with a thud that seemed to echo like a gunshot. The conversation below ceased abruptly. She fled the library and was seated in the drawing room, teacup in hand, when the Duke entered moments later. His expression revealed nothing. "I apologize for the delay," he said smoothly, "a matter requiring attention." Charlotte forced a smile. "Of course, Your Grace." But everything had changed. The pleasant intellectual companion she thought she'd found was revealed as something else entirely. A man who viewed their engagement as a transaction, who spoke of her mother with disdain, who was using her father in some way she didn't yet understand. That evening, she confronted her father. "What arrangement do you have with the Duke?" she demanded, finding him in his study. Henry's face paled. "I don't know what you mean." "Please don't lie to me. Not anymore. What did you promise him? Why is he marrying me?" Her father seemed to age before her eyes. He sank into his chair and covered his face with his hands. "I needed this match, Charlotte. The estate is mortgaged beyond recovery. The Duke offered to settle the debts in exchange for certain documents." "What documents?" "Letters. Letters your mother left me before she died. Letters she made me promise to keep hidden unless circumstances became desperate." Charlotte's blood ran cold. "What kind of letters?" Henry looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. "I don't know. She sealed them. The Duke is the only one who's read them. He came to me 3 months ago with an offer, your hand in marriage in exchange for the letters and the settlement of my debts. He said the letters contained information that would prove valuable to him. And you agreed. You sold me for the price of your debts. I thought he would be good to you. He seemed genuinely interested during the courtship." "It was all performance, Father. He thinks our family beneath him. He called Mother worthless." The words hung between them like a blade. Henry's face crumpled. "Your mother was the finest woman I ever knew. Whatever those letters contain, they cannot diminish what she was." Charlotte left the study and returned to her room, her mind racing. The next morning, she did something she had never done before. She went through her mother's belongings without permission. Her mother had died 5 years earlier, and Henry had kept her chamber exactly as she'd left it, a shrine to grief. Charlotte searched methodically through drawers and boxes until she found a small locked case hidden beneath a floorboard. She broke the lock with a letter opener. Inside was a single letter addressed to her in her mother's elegant hand. Her fingers shook as she unfolded it. "My dearest Charlotte, if you are reading this, then the time has come for you to know the truth. The man you call Father, Henry Pemberton, is not your father by blood, though he has loved you as his own since the day you were born. Your true father is someone I cannot name in writing, for his position is too elevated, his reputation too precious. But I have kept proof, letters he wrote me, a ring he gave me, documents that establish your legitimacy. I was 17 when we met, working in my uncle's bookshop. He was already married, trapped in a loveless union arranged by his family. What began as friendship became love. When I found myself with child, he wanted to acknowledge you, to give you his name and position. But I refused. The scandal would have destroyed him and you both. Henry Pemberton was a kind customer who had shown me respect when others treated me as beneath notice. When I confessed my situation, he offered marriage without hesitation. He has raised you as his daughter, loved you truly, and for that I will be eternally grateful. But you deserve to know your true heritage. The documents are kept in a bank vault under the name Elizabeth Thornton, my maiden name. The key is hidden in the lining of my blue jewelry box. Use this knowledge wisely, my darling girl. Your true father is a man of great power and influence. If you choose to reveal yourself to him, it could change your life entirely, but it could also bring great difficulty. Whatever you choose, know that you were conceived in love, raised in love, and are worthy of every happiness. Your loving mother, Elizabeth. Charlotte read the letter 3 times, her hands trembling. She found the blue jewelry box, discovered the key hidden in the lining, and sat staring at it as dawn broke over London. Her mother had been protecting a secret that could elevate Charlotte from minor nobility to, what? The illegitimate daughter of someone powerful, certainly. But who? The question consumed her through the following weeks. She went through the motions of wedding preparations, dress fittings, guest lists, arrangements, while the Duke grew increasingly distant. His visits became perfunctory. His conversation, stilted. The intellectual connection she'd felt during their courtship evaporated, revealing the cold transaction beneath. She began to understand. The Duke had somehow learned of her mother's secret and acquired those documents from her father. He was using them for leverage or blackmail against her true father, and Charlotte was merely an inconvenient attachment to the prize he'd actually sought. The revelation should have devastated her. Instead, it crystallized her resolve. 3 days before the wedding, Charlotte went to the bank her mother had indicated. The vault contained a leather portfolio tied with ribbon. Inside were letters written in a bold, masculine hand, each signed with a single initial, W. She read them all. The love contained in those pages was undeniable, passionate, intelligent, anguished. The writer had been tormented by his inability to publicly acknowledge the woman he loved and the child they'd created. With the letters was a ring bearing a crest she recognized immediately. Her breath caught. Her true father was the Duke of Wellington himself. The hero of Waterloo, one of the most celebrated men in England, former Prime Minister. His wife, the Duchess, was known to be cold and distant. Their marriage had been arranged and reportedly unhappy. The timeline fit. Wellington would have been in his 40s when her mother was 17, scandalous, but not impossible. Charlotte sat in the bank's private room, trying to absorb the magnitude of the revelation. She was the illegitimate daughter of one of the most powerful men in the British Empire. No wonder the Duke of Ashford wanted these documents. With such leverage, he could extract almost anything from Wellington: political favors, financial backing, influence. And her father, Henry Pemberton, had handed them over without understanding their true value, desperate to save his failing estate. Charlotte carefully returned the documents to the portfolio and left the bank. Her mind worked rapidly, formulating a plan. The wedding was set for Saturday at St. George's Church in Hanover Square. Charlotte had 3 days. She spent the first day confirming her suspicions. Discreet inquiries, carefully worded questions to old family friends, an examination of her mother's diary from the relevant years, all supported the conclusion. Her mother had indeed worked in a bookshop near Westminster during the exact period when Wellington's political career was ascending. The dates of their correspondence matched perfectly. The second day, she composed a letter. She wrote and rewrote it a dozen times before settling on words that felt true. Your Grace, I am Charlotte Pemberton, daughter of Elizabeth Thornton. I have recently discovered documents that reveal you to be my father by blood. I write not to make demands or cause scandal, but because I believe you should know that your letters and tokens of affection have been acquired by the Duke of Ashford, to whom I am engaged to be married. I suspect he intends to use them to your detriment. I thought you should know. Respectfully, Charlotte Pemberton. She sent the letter by private messenger to Wellington's residence at Apsley House. The third day she waited. The wedding was tomorrow, her trousseau was packed, the church was decorated, guests were arriving in London. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a carriage bearing the Wellington crest arrived at Pemberton House. Charlotte received the Duke in the drawing room. He was 73 years old, his famous profile etched with the lines of age and experience. His eyes, the same unusual shade of gray as her own, studied her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You have your mother's face, he said quietly, but my eyes. Charlotte curtsied, Your Grace. He moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back in the military posture that had become his trademark. Elizabeth was the great love of my life. I have never forgiven myself for lacking the courage to defy convention for her. She loved you, Charlotte said. Her letters make that clear. I wanted to acknowledge you, to give you my name, my protection. She refused. She said the scandal would destroy my career and mark you as something shameful. She was wiser than I. He turned to face her. The Duke of Ashford approached me 2 months ago. He claimed to possess certain documents and suggested that a business arrangement might prevent their publication. I refused to be blackmailed. I told him to do his worst. Charlotte's eyes widened. You weren't afraid of scandal. I'm an old man, child. My career is behind me. My wife and I have maintained separate lives for decades. If the world learns I loved someone else and fathered a daughter outside my marriage, I can endure the gossip. But you, his expression softened, you would bear the stigma of illegitimacy. That concerned me. Yet you called his bluff. I did, and apparently it enraged him. He proceeded with the engagement to your father, I presume to maintain some leverage or perhaps to punish me by association. Wellington's jaw tightened. When I received your letter yesterday, I realized he'd manipulated you into this marriage without your knowledge of the full situation. I overheard him, Charlotte admitted. I know he views me with contempt, but I didn't understand the broader scheme until I found Mother's letters. Wellington moved closer, studying her face. You're intelligent. Elizabeth always was. What do you want, Charlotte? The question, so direct and unexpected, momentarily silenced her. What did she want? I want the truth known, she said finally. Not publicly. I don't seek to cause scandal for its own sake, but I won't enter a marriage based on deception and contempt. The Duke of Ashford thinks I'm worthless. Let him learn exactly how wrong he is. A smile played at Wellington's lips, the expression of a military strategist recognizing a sound battle plan. You have more of me in you than just your eyes. Very well. We'll give him quite a revelation. The next day, St. George's Church was filled with society's elite. Charlotte arrived in her mother's carefully preserved wedding gown, altered to fit current fashion. She looked pale but composed. The Duke of Ashford waited at the altar, his expression unreadable. Charlotte wondered if he'd rehearsed which mask to wear, the loving bridegroom for the audience's benefit, or the cold aristocrat she'd come to know. The ceremony proceeded in the traditional manner. They spoke their vows. The congregation prepared for the final blessing. Then the church doors opened with a resonant boom. The Duke of Wellington strode down the aisle, his military bearing commanding instant attention. The congregation's collective gasp was audible. I must object to this marriage, Wellington announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the church. The officiating priest paled. Your Grace, on what grounds? On the grounds that the groom is marrying this young woman under false pretenses, and with the intent to defraud both her and myself. The Duke of Ashford's face went rigid. This is absurd. On what basis do you make such accusations? Wellington stopped beside Charlotte, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. On the basis that the bride is my daughter, born of a woman I love deeply, and you, Ashford, have been attempting to blackmail me using documents you obtained by deceiving her guardian. The church erupted in shocked whispers. Charlotte kept her gaze steady, watching the Duke of Ashford's face cycle through disbelief, rage, and calculation. You're claiming this. This nobody is your bastard. Ashford's voice dripped with disdain. Even if true, it hardly changes anything. She remains illegitimate. Illegitimate, yes, Wellington said calmly, but hardly a nobody. I have this morning executed documents establishing her as my acknowledged natural daughter, with all the rights and protections that entails. She will receive an income of £5,000 per annum, a residence in London, and my full political and social backing. He turned to address the stunned congregation. "I make this public acknowledgement freely and without shame. Lady Charlotte Pemberton is my daughter. I'm proud to claim her." Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes, not from shame but from something she'd never expected: acceptance. Ashford's facade finally cracked. "This is a manipulation. She's clearly put you up to this to avoid a legitimate marriage." "Legitimate?" Wellington's voice turned glacial. "You obtained documents through deception, used them to coerce her father into an engagement, and proposed marriage not out of affection but as part of a blackmail scheme. There is nothing legitimate about your intentions, Ashford." "You cannot prove." "I have Lord Pemberton's signed testimony detailing the entire arrangement. I also have your correspondence with my secretary, in which you explicitly threaten to publish certain letters unless I provide political favors." Wellington's expression was that of a man who had commanded armies and cowed emperors. "You underestimated me, boy, and you grievously underestimated my daughter." Charlotte stepped forward, addressing Ashford directly for the first time. "You called me worthless. You said I inherited my mother's shame. But my mother was a woman of integrity who sacrificed her own comfort for those she loved. And my father," she glanced at Wellington, "my true father is a man who has owned his mistakes and protected his own, even at cost to his reputation." She removed the engagement ring from her finger and held it out. "I will not marry a man who values leverage over love, connections over character. This engagement is ended." Ashford stared at the ring, his face contorted with fury and humiliation. Finally, he snatched it from her palm. "You'll regret this, both of you. I'll ensure the scandal." "Scandal?" Wellington laughed, a sharp bark of amusement. "My dear Duke, I've survived Napoleon. I've survived Parliament. I've survived a miserable marriage and countless political intrigues. Your threats are nothing but the buzzing of an irritating insect." He offered Charlotte his arm. "Come, my dear, let's leave this farce behind." Charlotte took his arm, and together they walked down the aisle. The congregation parted like water before them, faces showing various shades of shock, disapproval, and grudging admiration. Outside, Wellington's carriage waited. He handed her inside and climbed in after her. "That was quite possibly the most scandalous thing I've done since Waterloo," he said, settling into the seat across from her. Charlotte laughed, a sound of pure relief. "Will it be terrible, the gossip?" "Undoubtedly. For a few weeks we'll be the favorite subject of every drawing room in London. Then some other scandal will eclipse us." He regarded her thoughtfully. "The question is, can you endure it?" "Mother endured far more for my sake. I can manage some disapproving stares." Wellington smiled. "Elizabeth raised you well. Henry Pemberton, too. He's a good man, if not the wisest with finances. He tried to protect me in the only way he knew how." "Indeed, I've settled his debts incidentally. Consider it my contribution to rearing you these past 22 years." Charlotte's throat tightened. "Thank you, Your Grace, Father. I don't know what to call you." "In private, I should like it if you called me Father. In public, Your Grace will suffice. We must maintain some propriety after all." His eyes twinkled with dry humor. The carriage carried them toward Apsley House. Wellington explained his plans, how he would introduce her to society under his acknowledged protection, how his influence would shield her from the worst of the scandal, how he hoped to know her better after years of enforced separation. Charlotte listened, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over her. Her life had transformed in mere moments from trapped bride to acknowledged daughter of one of England's greatest heroes. The path ahead would not be easy, but it would be honest. 3 months later, Charlotte stood in the gardens at Apsley House during a reception Wellington was hosting in her honor. Society had indeed been scandalized by the revelations, but Wellington's unflinching support had forced acceptance. She was now received everywhere, though always with whispers trailing in her wake. Henry Pemberton, relieved of his debts and the weight of his secrets, had regained some of his vitality. He was inside, conversing with guests who now treated him with new respect as the man who'd raised Wellington's daughter. Charlotte was studying a rose bush when she heard footsteps on the gravel path. She turned to find a gentleman approaching, Lord James Thornton, a distant cousin on her mother's side who'd been unexpectedly kind during the scandal. "Lady Charlotte," he greeted her with a warm smile, hiding from the admirers. "Seeking a moment's peace," she admitted. "I'm still adjusting to being the center of attention." "You handle it with remarkable grace." He paused, then continued with careful formality. "I wonder if you might permit me to call on you next week. I'd very much like to know you better outside the circus of public gatherings." Charlotte studied him. Lord James was younger than the Duke of Ashford, with an open, honest face. His interest seemed genuine, unmarred by calculation or ulterior motive. "I would like that," she said. As he departed with a pleased smile, Wellington emerged from the house and joined her by the roses. "Lord James is a good man," he observed. "Solid character, reasonable prospects, genuine affections. Are you vetting my suitors already?" "Absolutely. I've missed 22 years of fatherhood. I intend to be thoroughly involved going forward." But his tone was teasing, affectionate. Charlotte linked her arm through his. "The Duke of Ashford sent me a letter last week." Wellington's expression darkened. "Oh." An apology of sorts, wrapped in excuses and self-justification, but still. He acknowledged that he'd acted dishonorably. "I don't think he's changed fundamentally, but perhaps being exposed taught him something. Or perhaps he simply learned to be more careful in his schemes." Wellington patted her hand. "Either way, he's no longer your concern." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the garden. Charlotte thought of her mother, who'd made impossible choices out of love. She thought of Henry Pemberton, who'd raised her as his own. She thought of Wellington, who'd finally claimed her despite the scandal. Most of all, she thought of herself, a woman who'd been called worthless and had discovered she was anything but. "I'm glad I found those letters," she said quietly. "So am I," Wellington replied. "I've lived with many regrets, Charlotte, but knowing you, claiming you, that's something I'll never regret." In the ballroom behind them, music began to play. Wellington offered his arm. "Shall we? I believe tradition demands I dance with the guest of honor." Charlotte took his arm and let him lead her inside into the warmth and light, into a future built not on deception, but on truth acknowledged and accepted. She was the acknowledged daughter of a duke, the beloved child of two fathers, the inheritor of her mother's strength. And she was most certainly not worthless. She was priceless. If you loved this story of quiet power and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for stories about dignity, patience, and the kind of love that has to be earned rather than assumed.